At my wife's funeral, I expected silence. Instead, my granddaughter walked up to me. With a smirk, she pressed a bouquet into my hands. The petals looked fresh, but they were cold. Cold like her fingers, and colder than her heart. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Edmund. I'm 74 years old, and this is what really happened. The perfume hit first, too sweet for the chapel. It tunneled through the lilies and the candle smoke and the old wood polish that had lived in these pews longer than she had been alive. For Nana, she said loud enough to be heard, soft enough to be called respectful. The cellophane complained when her fingers let go. Thank you, I managed. Paper thin, we both faced the casket. She didn't bow her head, she tilted her phone and let the altar lights paint her cheekbones. The shudder was silent, her smirk wasn't. A line separates grief from display. She stood on the wrong side of it. I had taught her as a child to mind lines, crosswalks, boundaries, the blue ones on paper that keep letters from bleeding into each other. Somewhere between 13 and the powdered cheeks she wore today, she learned that crossing lines buys attention, and attention feels like love if you don't read the label. Pastor Hale touched my elbow. When you're ready, ready didn't belong in the same sentence as my wife's name. I nodded. The bouquet was heavier than it looked. My winter-stiff fingers couldn't find the ribbon's start. The knot was tight, shortened by haste, the kind of knot you tie when you don't picture the hands that must untie it. Later. Grandpa, she said, parking the word where I could trip over it. Do you want me to put them there? Her chin tilted at the casket. Practice. I listened, organ pedals, candle murmurs, the pulpit mic ticking as if clearing its throat. I waited for the voice I had slept beside for 50 years to cut through the noise. I said nothing. That was the answer. Her heels announced each inch of their height on stone. Tick, tick, tick. I could have told her how sound behaves in rooms built to carry voices. But lessons that begin with "at your grandmother's funeral" are invitations to resentment. I carried the bouquet forward. The casket's lacquer returned a ghost of me. White hair, outline, unsteadied shoulders. When I laid the flowers, the cellophane made a small storm. The lilies sagged beside them, honest and tired. The roses grinned. People reached for phrases when they didn't know what else to reach for. She's in a better place. At least you had so many years. She wouldn't want you to be sad. They draped those sentences over me like bright scarves. Kind, insufficient. My wife preferred a coat that worked. Back in the pew, the organ poured something sturdy under us. Chloe leaned toward her brother and whispered. Hair like a curtain. My son's jaw clenched, then released. He mouthed, "Not now." She rolled her eyes and looked straight at me to be sure I had seen. I had. Grief is blunt. It makes you drop keys in patience. It also sharpens odd senses. Today it was smell. The roses were a perfume of themselves. Too many, too eager. Applause that starts before the performance ends. Miriam spoke first. My wife's sister, Wendover-Fence voice. She told a road trip story from '79 and 2 flat tires. People laughed. Pews creaked approvingly. I laughed too. The laughter arrived from an old part of me that believed in road shoulders and payphones. During the next speaker, a glitch of air, a phone, waking, velvet hiss of a finger sliding across a microphone hole, then a whisper shaped downward. Is he even crying? A pause, softer, pleased. Nope. A chapel makes whispers, choose directions. This one chose me. It pricked my eardrum and lodged like a splinter. I looked at my hands, knuckles like small mountains. The wedding band she slid onto my finger in a barn with string lights and a generator that failed at the chorus. People sang louder. We always had. There's silence and there's restraint. One is empty, the other is chosen. I chose restraint, not because I lacked words, but because I wanted the right ones in the right hands at the right time. Mercy is timing. So is justice. The hymn rose like warmed bread. I didn't sing. I watched the font on the hymn card as if you could inherit steadiness from typeface. When the final chord released us, the microphone's red dot waited like a patient eye. The receiving line began. Strangers shook my hand and told me what a gift she had been. Nana would have loved these, Chloe said, tapping the bouquet with 2 thornless fingers. The cellophane scolded. I picked the color. It matches my recital dress. Remember? I remembered everything, the cough, the week before, the promise we kept anyway. The way she looked at the mirror more than the music. I remember, I said. We moved to the fellowship hall. Coffee urns exhaled. Chairs scraped. Coat hangers clicked like teeth. Chloe didn't help Miriam with a chair. She did take another picture, chin down, lips softened, the casket a pale shimmer in the door's glass. My daughter-in-law noticed and chose silence. Choices stack. They build rooms you must live in later. Ed, Pastor Hale said at my shoulder. Gentle with the name. When you're ready for the reading, I'll set the mic. He meant the eulogy I'd written on the back of a grocery list, because I couldn't open a clean notebook for a sentence that would close her story. The list still said milk, bread, basil, days continue even when a life doesn't. Soon, I said, let them meet first. He nodded and squeezed my forearm like a hand on a railing. Chloe's laugh popped like a cork. Where the cousins gathered, laughter is allowed at funerals. Some laughter saves people. This one sold them. She angled her body for the camera, captioned with quick, clever thumbs. She didn't look at the portrait on the easel. I took a plate to the window table. Winter pressed its face to the glass. Potato salad tasted like refrigeration. Triangles tasted like obligation. My son sat, an olive rolled and stood guard against my cup. Dad, he began, voice caught between anger and embarrassment. I'm sorry about her tone. I'll talk to her. Will you talk about tone? I asked, or about values. I kept my eyes on the parking lot, trunks, scarves, the little pause people make before deciding where to put their hands. He sighed. I know how it looks. How it looks, I said, is less than what it is. I turned. What it is a choice she's making in a house built for her with a roof we kept repaired. I didn't teach her cruelty, he said. Cruelty is very good at teaching itself, I answered, especially when applause is available. Don't mistake attention for love. It's like mistaking a lit match for the sun. The corner of his mouth acknowledged the sentence. Do you want me to take the mic? If it's hard, it will be, I said, and I will. At the lectern, the microphone learned my height and leaned back. Thank you for being here, I began. She would have called this a fuss, then refilled your plates twice. Talking about a person in a room they used to move through is like walking around furniture that isn't there. Tilt your head, and you can still see the outline. I told a winter story about a leaking roof and soup in the hallway. People smiled, tired, grateful. Halfway through, a tiny digital throat clearing from the front row left. I kept my head level and my eyes low. Chloe's phone lay on her lap, screen bright, her fingers silhouettes. She wasn't recording me. She was recording herself. The whisper was aimed into the bottom edge. He's finally doing it. Took long enough. A click, the screen blinked to black. A chapel carries more than hymns. Sometimes it carries proof. I didn't break stride. She married me in a barn, I said, because we were poor and proud and in love. When the lights went out, she laughed louder. We sang without microphones, and it reached the field anyway. People laughed through their tears. On the grocery list, I placed a dot next to basil so my hands would do something besides shake. Quotable lines my wife would tease when I packed too much into a sentence are just thoughts wearing good shoes. I gave them one anyway. Grief isn't an event, it's a place. You don't get over a place, you learn its streets, and you keep your keys near the door. After more hands, more scarves, the child left a crayon on the casket. The kitchen volunteer asked if we needed pepper. Real help comes unannounced. I stacked each offer like folded blankets. Warm, patient. Chloe floated back. That was nice, she said, as if I'd finally met a deadline. Didn't know you had it in you. What is it you think I have in me? Calm has a temperature. You can set it if you practice. Emotion, she decided. Authenticity. People love that. People love truth, I said. Authenticity is just what people call truth when they're afraid to say the word. Her frown said the clip wouldn't sell. Your grandmother loved truth even when it made her smaller in the moment. That's why she grew so large over time. I'm honoring her my way, she said. The phone gleamed at her hip. Honor isn't a way, I said. It's a weight. You carry it, or you don't. If you carry it only until your arms get tired, that's not honor. That's attention with good lighting. She pouted, teenager peeking through careful makeup. Mom said you'd be like this. When your grandmother had chemo, I asked, do you remember the day she asked you not to post a photo from that chair? She looked beautiful anyway. She asked you to leave that moment unlit. There are rooms in people that should not have windows. She's gone, she said, as if windows and walls changed with the occupant. Gone, I repeated. The word cracked like ice. And you are still making choices. The graveside wind combed the tree line. The ground quit pretending not to be hard. The backhoe waited at a respectful diagonal. A sleeping animal. We stood, we breathed steam. We listened to the careful sounds of people trying to be quiet. Chloe stepped close again. Here, she said, pressing a single rose into my palm. Thorns stripped. For the top. The petals were cool as soap. Her smile wished me a good performance. I laid the rose, the ribbon tail flicked. Somewhere behind us, a shutter made its quick, greedy slice. I felt the weight of my coat, the fold of the grocery list, the circle of the ring. I felt the new balance of a life shifted and unable to return to level. I said nothing. Endure the smirk, say nothing. Let the wind carry the scent before it learns the shape of my name. At the car, my son kept his voice low. Dad, the video, he winced. She posted something. It's not kind. He showed me a clip, my face near the casket. Letters splashed over it. He didn't even tear up until the camera went on. Music, a soft beat, smirk turned sound.
I watched. The polish was expert.
The cruelty guessed correctly how much attention it would buy. I handed the phone back. Ask her to delete it. I will, he said. I don't know if she will. Ask, I said. The wind took the word and erased the trail. That night, the house hummed the way houses hum when one voice goes missing. The refrigerator was louder. The clock found an opinion. Pipes remembered to sigh. I put the roses in a vase because refusing kindness, even counterfeit kindness, is a craft I do not practice. The smell tried to own the kitchen. I opened a window until the heater complained. On the table, beside the grocery list, lay the leather book, brown, buckled. Its edges had softened from years of careful hands. My wife wrote on Thursdays and Sundays. Envelopes were for groceries. The book was for truth, our private atlas. Places we'd been, roads never to take again, words we should have said out loud, quiet mercies we were glad we kept. I hadn't opened it since she died. Not from fear, from readiness. Tonight the house asked for company. I undid the buckle, the leather exhaled. I turned to her last entry. Her handwriting leaned without falling. January 14, it read, "The house is so clean, the way you clean when you want to keep someone alive. He is sleeping. I'm writing this here so I don't say it aloud and make it worse." I stopped. The air changed shape as if the room touched my shoulder. The next line, Chloe used my mother's ring for a video today. The words held steady. She asked me without asking. She asked in front of an audience. I said yes in a way that was no, privately. I think she heard only the yes. The ring looked wrong under that kind of light. Some things look wrong under certain light. The clock clicked. A car stitched its sound along the curb. I turned pages. Thursdays, Sundays, garden notes. The oncology nurse with kind eyes. The neighbor's dog that brought its leash to the back door like hope on a strap. Then funerals make people strange before they happen. I do not want my memorial to be a stage. If you, Edmund, are reading this after, keep the small rooms small. We loved each other in small rooms. Let the big room belong to God. Proof doesn't comfort. It clarifies. The difference matters. Some think a smirk is power. It isn't. It's a leak. It tells you where the air escapes. I sat in the quiet a long minute and let the chapel's air fall back into place. In my lap, the grocery list softened where my thumb kept finding the same corner. I thought about the last winter market we walked together, how she bartered basil from a farmer who added 3 sprigs for luck, and how she said luck is mostly habits we keep practicing. Dignity isn't silence, she told me once. It's choosing a sentence that leaves the other person one door open. I carried that line around like a spare key and tried it in my mouth. Now, it fit, it turned. It opened a small space in me where I could stand up straight. In the kitchen, I stood with the recorder open and listened to the house breathe. Heater, duck, clock, the small tick of the cooling pan we hadn't put away. I thought of the board at church that handled memorial funds and how rooms can grow gentler when money is pointed at the right light. A name on a plaque isn't love, she wrote years ago, but it can point people toward it. I spoke into the phone with that in mind. I kept my voice low, measured, ordinary. A steady voice is heavier than a loud one. It carries without shouting and leaves no scratch marks on the door. When I finished, I did what she did whenever she made something real. Washed my hands, turned off the kitchen light, left the window open a finger's width, enough to keep the roses honest. In the dark, the phone buzzed again. Another message. Same number, no caption. A second clip. I pressed play. The plastic on the bouquet crackled like a match. Then a whisper, not meant for me. Smile bigger, Chloe told herself. Make them think you loved her. The edit cut fast, but not fast enough to hide the last word, writing the end like a splinter. Content. The smell found me before the morning did. Coffee boiled too long. Candle wax gone sour near the wick. The roses overeager pressing their sweetness against the windows like children fogging glass. I stood in the kitchen and let the house breathe around me because breathing was the one rhythm left. I didn't have to practice. Chloe's clip kept crawling into other people's phones. Even with the sound off, cruelty has a scent. Warm at first, then it burns. My son texted, "Dad, I'm handling it." Another text from an unknown number, "Mr. Edmund, I'm sorry about the video. Please call me." It signed itself, Noah. My grandson, he picked up on the second ring. "Grandpa," he said, and the old name softened air that had been hard all day. "I'm in your driveway." When I opened the door, Winter stepped in with him and put cold fingers on the roses. He stood with his hands tucked into his sleeves, tall, too thin, a white line pressed into his lower lip from being bitten too long. "Smells like Nana," he said. "Not the flowers, the kitchen, the basil." "Habit," I said. I opened the window. He nodded but didn't look up. "I'm sorry," he said, words crawling out of a place that doesn't get sunlight. "About everything." "Sit," I said, and poured 2 cups of coffee that needed mercy. He wrapped both hands around the cup, the way cold people do when they don't want to ask for fire. "I saw the post," he said. "I didn't share it. I told her to take it down. She blocked me." "She blocked her brother," I said. "She blocks whoever doesn't clap," he said. "She calls it boundaries. Boundaries are fences," I said. "Not velvet ropes." His breath shivered into the rim. "I didn't come only to say sorry," he said. "I came to tell you I'm on your side." "My side is quiet," I said. "It doesn't pay well." "I know," he said, "but it's real." He unlocked his phone and pressed play on a voice memo. The house leaned in without moving. Chloe's voice filled the kitchen, bright, hard sugar on glass. "No, don't shoot the casket from that angle," she said. "It makes my face look flat. Go wider. And tell Mom to stop with that crying face. It looks fake." "Wait, that's good. Hold." Caption idea he finally cracked. A smaller voice. "My daughter-in-law. Chloe, not so loud." Then no afraid. "Stop. Please."
They turn the screen over like a hot lid.
"I made it yesterday," he said. "I thought I'd use it to make her take the video down. But I think it belongs to you. Mercy is timing. Justice is too. Proof has its own smell. The clean sting of something opened after it was shut too long." "Thank you," I said. Small words. Field-sized effect. I don't need a fight in the foyer. I need a place to speak where speaking does work. He nodded. "There's more." He pulled a small velvet square from his jacket. "She gave me this to hold. Said it was Nana's. Borrowing it for a video series. Said she'd put it back before you noticed." The ring looked back at me. Blue stone, old cut, metal warm from histories that didn't make it to photographs. The velvet smelled like closets and time. "She wore it in the clip," he said. "She said Nana would want the views." "Views or windows," I said. "If you sell the view, you sell the house sooner than you think. I want to help you stop this. There is all eye and there is audience. The difference is who holds the door and who holds the light. Keep it for now." I said, "Give it to Miriam today. She knows the weight of objects." He slid the velvet away. The roses found a new way to be loud behind us. He tilted his head toward the cabinet. "Smells like her pesto," he said. "Did you make it?" "Not yet," I said. "I made a recording."
Of what?
"Of the house, and of a few words that will go where they need to go, when they'll do the most work. Well, you're planning something," he said. His mouth squared itself for work. "Good." He breathed in and grimaced. "Sorry, my hoodie still smells like the church wax dust. Those programs on that rough paper." "I like that paper," I said. "It holds ink without bleeding." He stiffened, listening. "She's here." Chloe didn't ring. She came in on a key she hadn't earned. Perfume arrived first, the bottle from the dresser upstairs, sweetness my wife could wear because her kindness diluted it. On Chloe it turned to syrup. My jaw learned a lesson. My hands already knew. Hold without crushing. She leaned on the doorframe like it owed her the angle. "You didn't answer your messages," she said. "Bright. So I came." She sniffed. "Ugh. Smells like a salad in here." "It smells like food," I said. "Food is what people eat after funerals because chewing gives grief something to do." "That's a caption," she said. "See? You're getting it." Her eye cut to Noah. "What are you doing here?" "Being family," he said.
She did not like that.
"Mom wants to know if you're going to approve the memorial post." she said to me. Brand's waiting. It needs to go up by 9 for the U.S. audience. The U.S. audience, I repeated, tasting how stale the phrase had become. It's a fundraiser, she added, for cancer. Nana would love that. Nana would love sincerity first, I said. Money next. Sequence matters. She rolled a shoulder. We can workshop the caption if you insist. Draft is strong. She turned her phone so I could see the preview. My wife's portrait. Bold script, the roses, the line I'd spoken at the lectern about grief being a place, clipped and dressed up in quotation marks. A tiny sponsor logo tried to hide in the corner. The phone smelled faintly of warmed plastic. You don't have permission to cut my voice to fit your frame, I said. It's honoring, she said. Relax. Children are told to relax when adults want to continue, I said. I am not a child, I am the husband of the woman whose name you turned into a hashtag. Noah kept his back on the wall. Chloe, he said, stop. She glanced at him the way people glance at a shut door, annoyed by wood. You think you're righteous because you can't metabolize attention, she said. You're allergic to life. Attention is a seasoning, I said. It can make dry food taste like something. It isn't dinner. She smiled toward the exit. Whatever. 9 o'clock, with or without your blessing. She sniffed again. Open a window? It's open, I said. Open it more, she said, and stopped because the leather book on the table caught the light. She knew it by shape, if not by soul. Is that her journal? It's ours, I said, which means it also isn't yours. You can't gatekeep memory, she said, reaching. Noah stepped close and set his hand near the buckle without touching her. Don't, he said. Not this. Her eyebrows lifted. Since when do you tell me what to do? Since I watched you turn grief into inventory, he said. She clicked her tongue. 9, she repeated to me, and left a trail of perfume that didn't know how to leave a room kindly. The house exhaled. The heater clicked. Far away, a dog barked like a hinge. I'm sorry, Noah said again. Well, you came, I said. That matters. After he left, I took the leather book to the chair that remembered me. I opened to the middle. A pressed leaf fell into my lap. Bezel small, brittle. The smell small but true. She had marked something for me with a garden. I didn't read it. Not yet. There is a right hour for pain that helps.
Instead, I made calls. Quiet ones.
To Pastor Hale, a question about the fellowship fund and the timing of announcements. To Miriam, a request to stop by in the morning and bring the small tin from the top shelf of her pantry. The one labeled buttons that held everything except buttons. To the lawyer who answered from his kitchen with a "You okay, Ed?" that told me he knew where the good glasses were. Tomorrow, I said, we'll keep it small. I recorded another minute of the house. The refrigerator whispered. The roses tried to run the conversation. I turned them toward the window and let the cold teach them humility. A name near a sponsor logo. A scent near a body. What belongs near. What matters. At 8:59, my phone buzzed. A link. Then a second from Noah. Don't approve. Then an unknown plea. Please consider the cause. I watched the minute hand walk. At 9:00, the air didn't change. Somewhere, a number did. The knock. Miriam's coat brought winter roads and the peppermint she kept for choir kids. I went by your daughter-in-law's, she said. Unbuttoning. She asked me to help choose thank you cards. I saw the flowers on her table. I saw your sentence in a mock-up. I told her words have owners. She set a folded sheet on the table. And then I found this in my coat pocket when I got home. A printed email from Chloe to a brand manager. Subject like a grin. Body like a bruise. Deliverables include 1 memorial carousel, 1 grief quote slideshow, 1 live read at Wake if mic available. A fee, a percentage, rights to repurpose family audio. The kitchen cooled. The wind pushed its face through the open window. The roses took a step back. She put this in your code? I asked. Or someone did while I was helping with sandwiches, she said. Or I was meant to see it. I won't guess. I only know I saw, and now you have. Thank you, I said. Miriam sniffed. Practical even when angry. Those roses stink, she said. I'll take them to the stoop. Leave one, I said. The one without thorns. She understood more than I had said and left the thornless one on the sill where the cold could keep it honest. When she was gone, I sat with the email, Noah's recording, the velvet square, and the smell of basil that belonged to a summer that had not died. Rooms. The big room feeds crowds. The small room feeds people. I chose my room. I took the strap in my hand and felt the oil of it. I opened to the page the Basil had marked. Her handwriting stepped onto the air, like a careful dancer. If they make a stage of this, it began, bring them back to the kitchen. That's where our vows have always lived. And if someone uses my love as a caption, remind them. Love is a verb. Captions are nouns. Verbs move rooms. I closed the book. I could smell the answer. It smelled like bread dough about to rise. I texted Noah, be here at 7, bring Miriam, wear something warm, there will be coffee. I texted my son, I need you here in the morning. We're going to talk about doors and keys. The phone buzzed once more. A private message request from a name I didn't know. Gia, 2 lines. I dated your granddaughter. I know what she did to Nana's ring. Do you want the screenshot? I didn't open it. Not yet. Timing. I put the phone face down and the house breathed with me until we found the same pace. The leather answered before the light did. It breathed out a thin smell, oiled time, and the clean bite of old ink that never learned to hurry. I set the journal on the kitchen table where morning slid in as a narrow ribbon across wood. The basil leaf she'd pressed there gave one last green whisper and crumbled. Noah arrived first, early enough to surprise the floorboards. He brought quiet and a thermos. Morning, he said. Miriam followed. Wool, peppermint. The sound of zippers. My son came last, eyes rubbed raw by a night spent arguing with a screen. Coffee, I said, and the kettle agreed.
We didn't talk at first. The house did.
Heater, clock, window latch. Thinking about the wind, the roses turned toward the glass, had learned to keep their distance. Light lifted the room by an inch and waited. Before we look at anything, I said I want to name the room. This is a kitchen. In kitchens we make things that take time and feed people. We do not make products. We do not perform grief. Miriam. Amen. Noah set his thermos down like a fragile animal. She posted again, he said. A carousel, Nana's recipe cards between photos. Tradition lives on. She spelled pesto with 2 T's. My son closed his eyes. I'll handle it. You will try, I said, gentle. Trying is not the same as holding a door shut. Miriam set the tin on the table, the one labeled buttons that always lied. Her hands knew the hinge. Inside folded cloth, a fairy stub, a photo of a pie that never browned. Beneath an envelope with my name in her Thursday hand. It smelled of rosemary and paper dust.
I slid the letter free.
Her voice stood up from the page without clearing its throat. Ed, it began, if you're reading this in the morning, I'm glad. Morning is for true beginnings. You know I keep 2 ledgers. One in my heart, one in ink. The ink is for when the heart wants to forget kindness or overlook harm. I read until the words asked me to stop. Then a second envelope, legal stock with a blue edge. The flap wore a notary's neat insistence. On the front, her labeling, trust, First Amendment, kitchen. The word kitchen was underlined twice.
My son reached for a chair as if the paper owned gravity.
Mom made an amendment? She made a promise to herself, I said, and asked paper to help keep it. Miriam touched the seal. Paper is just memory with a spine. She nodded at me. Open it. The stamp looked like a coin pressed into a pond. First Amendment to the Brightman Family Trust. It read, dated May 11 last year. Signatures, hers, mine, 2 witnesses in precise small hands and a notary named L. Ortiz. The language was modest and firm. The way she baked. Clause 3 spoke gently, but did not bend. No proceeds or memorial funds, whether raised publicly or privately, shall be solicited, accepted, or expended in my name by any beneficiary without the written consent of my surviving spouse. Any beneficiary who monetizes my likeness, voice, or memory against this instruction shall be deemed to have predeceased me for the purpose of distributions herein. Noah's chair dragged once and stopped. Clause 4 lifted a small lantern. Chloe is loved. To become eligible for any distribution, she must complete 200 hours of service at the hospice, where Mrs. Donovan keeps the vase near the window. No posts, no cameras, only presence. When Miss Donovan writes that Chloe came and stayed, Chloe will have earned this family's name on paper as fully as she already owns it. In my heart, Miriam let out a breath that softened the edge of truth. She wrote the place into the paper. She said, that's her. My son rubbed his face. She'll call it cruel. It's not, I said. It's a hand on a shoulder pointing toward a door. Stapled behind a letter from our lawyer, plain as brown bread. It listed the witnesses, the notary's commission, where copies were lodged. It ended as he ends when he wants us to sleep. Your intentions are clear, and I will defend them. Old ink doesn't want to be a mirror. It wants to be a road. Noah, does this mean? It means the kitchen has rules, I said. And so does the trust. He leaned back. She'll explode. Explosions make noise. Miriam said. They don't build rooms. I set the amendment beside the journal. Two voices, her legal voice and her Thursday voice, sat together like hands across a table. We're not here to punish, I said. We're here to correct the course. My phone buzzed. Pastor Hale, side room is free after the second hymn. Perfect. The side room's coffee is bad in a way that reminds people what coffee was before the world learned latte art. I wrote to Chloe, kitchen at 11, bring the ring. She read it, dots paste, then ribboned words, busy. I'll send mom. Also, which ring? Your great-grandmother's, the blue one. It was a gift, not a prop. No reply. We practice waiting. People rehearse speeches. Few rehearse silence. At 10:40 the door opened. My daughter-in-law, flushed, coat misbuttoned. She's coming, she said. She's not happy. The phone rested against her chest like a nervous bird. Sit, I said. Miriam poured comfort on a schedule. Noah stood so his mother could take the chair with the least light. The journal waited between us like an old friend who never interrupts. She said, you're taking her inheritance. My daughter-in-law said, hollow. I'm keeping a promise her grandmother made, I said. It includes a way for Chloe to grow into what she thinks she already is. What is that? Worthy, I said. Not just visible. The knob turned again. Chloe arrived like weather decisive, uninvited, sure of purpose. Her phone hovered like a second face. If this is about the post, she said, you're late. It's performing. Today isn't performance, I said. It's paper. Paper burns, she said, tipping her chin at the roses. Flowers wilt. Post last. Post last, Miriam said, until a platform finds a new way to sell our attention back to us. Paper lasts until flood or flame, but the words we choose to live by last longer than both. Chloe rolled her eyes. Mom, tell them this is controlling. Her mother didn't turn. Read, she said softly, and slid the amendment forward. You can't make me, Chloe said. No, I said, but the kitchen. She snorted, but she read. Clause 3. Climbed into her eyes slowly. Deemed to have predeceased me, she said. What is that? Oh, it means, I said, a person can outlive their eligibility. This is revenge. Her phone, face down, reflected a pale ceiling. She wrote this to hurt me. She wrote this to help you, I said, to keep your feet on ground that bears weight. It says I have to work for free. It says you have to show up or no one claps. Miriam said, instead, you can't enforce this. Our lawyer can, I said, and slid his letter across. He will. She glanced at the seal, then at Noah. Did you know? I know Nana loved you enough to believe you could be more than a brand, he said. Her hand drifted to her pocket, then stopped. I'll bring the ring later. You'll bring it now, Miriam said. Kind voice, steel frame. Because later is what you say when you mean never. Chloe stared at her mother. The stare announced a war already too expensive. My daughter-in-law opened her purse and produced the velvet square Noah had returned at dawn. She placed it on the table. We don't borrow gravestones, she said. We don't borrow rings. She slid it to me. I'm sorry. Chloe flinched. You took my things? It was never yours, her mother said. That's the part that stings. I opened the square and let the stone drink a little winter light. Old cuts don't sparkle. They hold thus it. I closed the square and set it atop the journal. Now, I said, the second hymn is in 20 minutes. After that, Pastor Hale will open the side room. We will read one page from this journal, 2 clauses from this amendment, and 1 sentence from our lawyer. Not into a microphone. Not as content, as correction. Chloe laughed once, short as a cough. You think you can make me sit there while you drag me in front of people? I think you will either sit there or stand somewhere else and listen. The door will be open. Come, please, Noah said. She pressed her lips flat. I have a live at 11, she said. People are waiting. Let them wait, Miriam said. Or let them learn. They don't want to learn, Chloe said. They want feelings. Then we'll give them one you are not selling, I said. Humility? She put the phone in her pocket with the care of holstering a small, friendly knife. I'll come, she said, but I won't be quiet. Noise is allowed, I said. So is consequence. Church bells made their climb. The side room smelled like old glue and radiators. I put the journal on the table, opened to the basil page, and placed the amendment so the notary seal faced east. Pastor Hale, do you need me to stay? Pray in the hall, I said. Pray for listening. Chairs found legs. The door stayed open. Sun turned a nick in the table into a small star. I read my wife's Thursday voice. If they make a stage of this, bring them back to the kitchen. Miriam read clause 3 like a recipe. Steady, exact. My son read the lawyer's promise. Noah stood where Chloe could see him and did nothing loud, which is harder than it looks. Chloe's words arrived, edges sharp. It's manipulative, she said, but it's clear. Her eyes went to the hospice line and Mrs. Donovan's vase. Who is she? A woman who holds hands for a living? Miriam said. You'll like her if you stop trying to. Chloe looked toward the door and the light in the hall. The phone in her pocket vibrated twice. She didn't reach for it. Then a new knock, workman. Sure. A man in a thin coat leaned in, cap in hand. Brightman, he said. Delivery. He set a padded envelope on the table, heavy enough to bend the wood a little. Return, county clerk recorder's office. Inside, a certified copy. Not of the trust, of a deed, small and surgical. Transfer on death deed, community property with right of survivorship. It read recorded 2 months before the diagnosis, file number stamped in the corner. It reassigned a little rental by the park to me alone upon her death, with a margin note in her hand. So Chloe cannot sell what she does not own. Under it, a letter from our lawyer per her instructions. I waited to deliver this until after the service. Breathe and keep to the kitchen. Chloe stared at the stamp as if it had called her name on a list she didn't want to be on. You planned this, she whispered. You and Nana, you planned it without telling me. We planned it without asking your permission, I said. Gravity doesn't ask either. Her phone began to ring. The harsh tone she assigns only to a brand manager who pays in urgency. She looked at the pocket, then at the seal, then at the deed, and finally at the line I had not yet read aloud. I placed a finger under it and drew it forward. If a smile is used as a blade, answer with the door. Open it. Leave it open. Then stand where they must choose. She met my eyes. The phone rang again. She reached into her pocket slowly, as if the air had turned to honey, and drew the phone with the brand's name shouting from the glass. Her thumb hovered. Her gaze flicked to the blue square, to the stamp, to the journal's page. She set the phone face down, untouched. Do I still have a chance? She asked. The phone rang a third time, louder, then switched to a live request that would pull her voice into 1,000 rooms if she accepted it. She didn't move. Forks began their small percussion before the speeches returned. Not loud, just the light tap of metal agreeing with China. An honest sound in a room, tired of performance. Eyes wore their weight like coats. Mine too. I felt it in the skin under the lashes, in the way blinking asked for permission. We carried the side room back into the fellowship hall, journal closed, amendment folded, deed tucked flat. Nothing grand. Justice doesn't need a stage. It needs a table and enough quiet to hear paper when it speaks. Pastor Hale, one brief announcement, friends. He gestured to me, soft as an usher. Edmund would like to speak as we refill plates. Me, thank you. I kept it short because grief is a poor listener. If you wish to honor her, there is a simple way. The hospice that held her hand, Mrs. Donovan's vase by the window, has a fund that buys time for people who've run out of money before they run out of love. There's a box by the coffee and a card with a code. Give if you can, no photos, no posts. Just help. Forks paused, then resumed their small work. A quiet kind of yes. Miriam laid the cards beside the sugar. The cards were plain, black ink, a square, the hospice address spelled without hurry. The roses sat on the sill, chastened by the cold. Chloe stood near the end of the table where the hot dishes steamed. The warmth gave her cheeks a truth makeup. Couldn't manage, her phone slept in her pocket, undecided. She was undecided with it. Noah, I can help with the box. Me, stand where it's easy to say yes and hard to be seen. He smiled in the small way that means something was learned. My son returned from the hall with the expression people bring back from difficult texts. Son, Brand called, twice. They want to clarify rights. He made air quotes like they were heavier than his hands expected.
Ready.
The lawyer sent the letter, son, at 9:30. He looked toward Chloe and then away. They've paused deliverables pending compliance. The sentence sat on the table and adjusted its chair. Money is loud when it arrives. When it leaves, it's quieter, but the draft it makes can be felt in every room. I moved through the tables and accepted sentences wrapped in paper napkins. She taught me to knit. She kept soup in the freezer with other people's names on it. She told me to plant basil by the door so I'd cook more. I stacked these offerings inside where warmth keeps. Chloe drifted after me once, twice, like a tide that hadn't decided which moon to believe. Chloe, are you happy now? You embarrassed me in a church. May. I did not use a microphone. Chloe, you waved paper at me. The sear me paper waved back. I only held it up to the light. Her eyes were bright with sleep she had not given herself, heavy in the way a person gets when their will works all night, hauling things that won't fit through the door. I felt the weight in my own eyes too. Every blink a small lift. Fork, plate, a child's plastic cup finding its lid. The room returned to its work, feeding, remembering, standing when standing mattered. Miriam touched my sleeve. Miriam, Mrs. Donovan came. She nodded toward the doorway. A woman stood there as if doors were older friends, and you must greet them before entering. Her coat was thrift, careful. Her hands bore the permanent warmth of hands that know other hands. Mrs. Donovan, Mr. Brightman, her voice had the linen sound of someone who washes words before serving them. I'm only here to take a small corner of the thank yous. May take the whole corner if it helps. I walked her to the coffee table. This room knows what you do. It may not know that it knows. She smiled the way people do when truth lands in the right chair. Mrs. Donovan, your wife kept lilies at the nurse's station when we ran out. She said scent makes courage remember its job. We stood there with the box between us. People came, they folded bills. They wrote on the cards that weren't meant for names. Just the act. Forks resumed. Tap, rest, tap like rain. You're grateful for because the roof holds. Chloe tried to turn, then didn't. She tried a second time and arrived. Chloe. Mrs. Donovan, right? I'm Chloe. The name did not pose the way it often does. Mrs. Donovan, you look like your grandmother around the eyes. Chloe blinked. The weight there shifted. Chloe, I thank you. Her phone vibrated hard enough to make a little wordless sound. She ignored it long enough for the world to notice. A lawyer on my phone. We're square on the notices. Brand has suspended. Posts using your voice are being removed by their owners. If any remain, we'll nudge. A second message. The rentals transfer is recorded and acknowledged. Management company confirmed. I've arranged a 1-year pledge of that rent to the hospice per her margin note. You can announce as you wish. That was the quiet blow. Subtle as a hand setting a check beneath a plate, and just as final. Me to Pastor. 1 more minute. After the next hymn. Pastor Hale. Of course. He read it in my face and did not ask for the script. I looked at the room. The eyes were heavy. Yes, but not merely with grief. With the kind of fatigue that follows work well done. A life is not an event. My wife wrote it's a series of meals. Today we ate her memory and were fed. Noah. Should I bring the journal? Me. Just the one sentence. He knew which one. He had been raised in the kitchen too. We moved to the edge of the hall where the piano could still see us. Pastor Hale gave the nod. The hymn worked its way up the wall and hung there like light. Thank you for filling the box and for leaving your cameras in your pockets. I could feel the hush lean forward a little. I want to leave you with the line she left me. I didn't touch the journal. I had copied the sentence onto the grocery list. Between basil and milk, because the kitchen is where truth remembers itself. Love is a verb, I read, and verbs move rooms. Forks paused again in midair, as if the sentence had weight their hands respected. Me, one more detail. The little place by the park that some of you rented in your young years, she signed a paper that points its rent to the hospice this year. If you want to honor her, do what she did. Make small rooms kinder. Tell nobody when you can help it. Applause didn't come, relief did, in the form of people exhaling in sync and checking that their eyes were still heavy for the right reasons. Chloe's mouth opened, then closed. It opened again, different. Chloe, she stopped. She turned to Mrs. Donovan. Do you take volunteers? Mrs. Donovan. We take people who can sit and not ask time to hurry. Chloe, I can try. Mrs. Donovan. Trying is fine on your first day. After that, just come. She wrote a number on the back of a blank card and placed it in Chloe's open hand with a touch that said this weighed less than it looked. When the plates emptied and the coffee did its last duty, I found a chair by the window and watched the roses finally learn their size. Their scent retreated to the edges where it belonged. The journal lay closed. The amendment rested under my palm like a pulse calm, present. My son sat beside me. Son, I didn't know about the deed. Me, she thought it best to keep certain roofs from pretending they had more sky than they do. Son, she was right. Maya. Often, he stared at his hands. Son, I'm sorry for the things I train my children to love. We all train someone to love something. If we're lucky, we notice before the lesson sticks. He nodded slow. The weight on his eyes matched mine. Chloe approached as a person approaches a lake they misread yesterday. Chloe, I removed the post, she said. All of thank you, Chloe. The brand dropped me. They sent a screenshot of your lawyer's letter with the word compliance bolded like a door. Her laugh had no bright edges. He also wrote, we wish you healing. Me, that's a good door. Chloe, this isn't me asking for forgiveness. It's me saying I think I can be more than this. Me, say less, show up. She nodded. Her eyes were heavy for a reason that could work. Wedding. Outside, people made weather in the lot, scarves, car doors, a small wave at the person who always leaves first. The day kept its shape. Then a sound I did not expect today, a fork lifted from a plate and set down too hard. Metal to china, a sharp report. Heads turned. At the far table, a woman I didn't recognize stood fast. Chair legs complaining. She held her phone as if it had bit her. Stranger, is this your granddaughter? She showed Miriam a screen. An old clip, not today's, not last night's. The ring on Chloe's hand. A caption about heirlooms and legacies, with a smile that didn't belong to the words. The comments, some kind, many hungry, turned beneath like fish that have forgotten the surface. Miriam, it was, calm, clear. Stranger, it's re-uploaded. A larger page, they're tagging brands in the church. They're asking if the memorial is content. The fork sound echoed again, not from plates now, but from the place inside me where commitments strike. I felt the old fire in my hands and put them flat on the table until the flame turned to warmth I could use. My phone buzzed. Lawyer, we can handle the accounts, but there's a more direct way.
Another buzz.
Pastor Hale. People are gathering in the nave. They think there's one more reading. Do you want the mic? I looked at the journal, at the basil leaf crumbs, at the ring's velvet square, at Chloe's face trying not to lose what it had found. I heard the fork stilling, the room waiting for its next verb. Me? Yes, Pastor. I typed, but not for me. I stood, the weight left my eyes for the moment because it had work to do elsewhere. I picked up the journal and the amendment and the deed, and I held out my other hand to Chloe. Me? Come with me. She looked at her pocket as if it might argue. It didn't. She put her phone on the table face down, the way you leave a habit behind for an hour to see if you can. We walked toward the nave where the microphone waited like a question mark, with a cord. The door between rooms stood open. Air moved through it, the way truth does when someone lets it. Somewhere behind us, a fork settled, finally, in a clean, decided place. At the threshold, Chloe squeezed my fingers, small and real. Chloe, what do I say? Me. The sentence that opens a door. She nodded once, eyes heavy, voice quiet, and we stepped into the light. The nave had the soft echo of a room that remembers lullabies. Wood, stone, a line of light along the floor where the door wouldn't quite kiss the jamb. People moved in with the hush you hear in museums when a painting has been hung for the last time. Pastor Hale stood beside the mic and didn't touch it. When you're ready, he said to both of us. He knew who the voice belonged to. Chloe's fingers tightened around mine, then let go. She walked the last steps alone. The microphone waited at mouth level, its red eye calm as a patient animal. She stood there, set her shoulders, and did nothing for a full breath. That was the first miracle. I'm Chloe, she said. No flourish. No brand voice. Just the name the house had taught her. I thought I could use grief to feed my life. Her throat worked. I was wrong. I used my grandmother's face as a shelf for my own, and I called it honoring so I wouldn't have to call it hunger. She looked at the door at the light that made a ribbon on the floor. I made a video here yesterday, she said. I wanted attention to look like love. I wanted a caption to do a verb's job. She swallowed. I took it down. I can't take back the hands I pushed it into. The nave kept its breathing even. A child coughed and then didn't. My grandmother wrote a sentence. She said, love is a verb, and verbs move rooms. She looked over at me and I nodded because the sentence wanted that. I didn't move any rooms, I just moved my thumb. She took a second breath, longer. This is me moving a room. She stepped away from the microphone so her voice would not be bigger than it needed to be, and turned toward the open door. Mrs. Donovan, she said, I'm coming Monday. I'll sit. I'll stay. You don't have to sign my hours. You don't have to see me, but I'll be there. Mrs. Donovan's hand lifted once like a small flag from a country that wins without shouting. Chloe faced the knave again. If you save my posts, delete them. If you like them, don't hate yourself for it. You were trying to love someone you didn't know how to help. Help someone you can see instead. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the phone, and held the power button. A long pause. A little goodbye tone. A black screen that stayed black. She set the phone on the step below the pulpit and stepped back to the mic. I wore my great-grandmother's ring for a video, she said. I made it a trick of the light. It wasn't. It is weight, not shine. I'm returning it. She walked the ring to the table where the journal lay, placed the velvet square beside the leather, and rested her palm there, a heartbeat like a promise that knew its shape now. She turned to me. Grandpa, she said, I'm so sorry. Say less, I said, because the house prefers verbs to apologies. Show up. She nodded, her head lowered. No performance, just gravity's polite request. I placed the amendment and the deed beside the journal so paper could stand together without jostling. You've heard the rules, I said. They are not fences. They are doors. They will not shut you out. They will insist you enter by your feet and not your followers. We didn't read the clauses again. We didn't need to. The room had learned them by heart the way you learn recipes. You didn't know you knew. Pastor Hale said a sentence about mercy being the shape justice takes when it remembers who it is. Then he left the silence unbraided. People came, not to the mic, to us. A man from the back, hat in hand, told Chloe, my boy tried to sell our last Christmas to strangers. He gives out soup now and doesn't tell anyone. It took him 2 winters. There's still soup. A girl with a braid whispered, I deleted my channel last year. I sleep. Mrs. Donovan touched Chloe's forearm the way you keep a bird calm when you open the cage. The brand's re-upload did what re-uploads do. It ravened for a while, then hit the lawyer's letter and broke its teeth. Accounts muted their boldness. Captions lost their appetite. Compliance, the notice said in a tone that doesn't learn before it speaks. Resolved, the follow-up said, which is the word a platform uses when it wants you to stop watching it. We stayed. No announcements. No wrap-up. The knave gave us light and a door and a place to stand. When the last person left, the ribbon on the floor had moved a few inches. Because the journal waited. Leather sipping daylight like tea. It wasn't sure it deserved. Now what? My son asked. Now we do laundry, I said. We write thank you cards. We take the basil leaf out of the journal and use the smell to remember to cook for people who don't expect it. We fix the hinge on the back door. We take the rent check to the hospice and ask where the money will be quietest. Quiet money, he said. That's a sentence. Put it on the grocery list, I said. We walked home. The house received us with its honest noises. I put the ring in the drawer where it had slept next to the spare keys. I put the leather book beside the drawer because some anchors need to see the light to keep doing their job. I put the roses in the trash because mercy for flowers is not the same as mercy for people. Noah came that evening with hands that had been used. He had measured folding chairs and learned their weight. Can I read? He asked, both hands hovering over the journal, like a student waiting for permission to touch the globe. Choose a page, I said. He opened near the middle and smiled. She wrote about the time you pretended to like eggplant for a month until she found the compost pile. She made it like medicine, I said. I made it disappear. He kept reading. She wrote, marriage is not sharing everything. It's not making the other person carry what only you can lift. He looked up. Is that the same as love being a verb? It's the sister of it. He read a little more and then closed the book with the careful click of a thing that still had breath in it. Mrs. Donovan texted me, he said. She said Monday's shift is 5 to 9. They serve tea at 8 and pretend it's a party. Pretending can be holy, I said, if it keeps the pain on its feet long enough to say goodbye. He nodded, then smiled sideways. Chloe asked if she could borrow my old winter hat. The ugly one. She said it doesn't matter how she looks. Let her have it, I said. Let her be cold and useful instead of warm and watched. The front light clicked. Chloe came in without the scent of a brand. She smelled like outside and peppermint, the candy Miriam puts into people's field of view when they don't yet know they need sweetness. I told them no, she said. The big page that re-uploaded, they wanted a dialogue. I said, this isn't content, it's my grandmother. She tugged the ugly hat over her ears. It's Monday, right? It is, I said. You'll be tired Tuesday, and a better kind of tired. She looked around the kitchen like a place she hadn't seen without lights in a long time. The basil on the sill was modest but alive. The window was open a finger's width to let the house stay honest. The grocery list sat where it always had, between the pen that doesn't roll and the mortar that remembers every clove of garlic we asked it to change. We ate simple food, pasta with a sauce that wouldn't look like anything on camera, bread that had a little too much crust. We ate and no one took a picture. It felt like prayer by another name. Later, I walked the house. The bedroom where the pillow still remembered her. The hallway where our wedding photo leaned because the nail had always been a little ashamed of its work. The small room where the sewing machine listened for the foot that would not press its pedal again. I took the journal to the chair and wrote in my hand, the one she loved for how it shook over the first letters and steadied as the sentence found its feet. Today I wrote, a girl set down a phone and picked up a verb. I paused and let the heater talk. We did not win. We did not lose. We kept the door open. That is a kind of victory I can sleep inside. The phone on the table lit up with a message from a number I didn't know. I'm an oncologist. It began. I saw what your family did today. The quiet kind. We need more of it. Thank you. Another minutes later from a name I did know. Gia. I found the screenshot. She wrote, I won't post it. I will send it to you if you need it for paper. But I think she doesn't need the weight anymore. I think she understands.
I didn't ask for the file.
Not because proof was worthless. Because proof had done its work and was now better as ash. I slept. In sleep, a house returns favors. It holds your breath when you forget and gives it back when you wake. Morning brought the smell of coffee that learned to stop before it grew bitter. And the first honest warmth of a winter sun testing the window. Chloe shuffled in wearing the ugly hat and holding a little canister of tea-like equipment. Do I put milk in it? She asked, silly and serious at once. Ask the nurse who knows. I said. Ask twice. Remember the names. Say them back. She nodded and started to leave, then turned back. Can you say it again? She asked. The sentence.
I could have sent her with a loophole, a clause, a rule. Instead, I gave her the line that had become the kitchen's weather. Love is a verb, I said, and verbs move rooms.
She breathed once, as if making space for the words to sit where they could do their work, and left. The door closed gently. The house hummed. Basil made a tiny flag of green against the cold. I took the rent envelope from the drawer and wrote the hospice's name in my clearest letters. I filled it with what the law had arranged and what our hands had already decided. Quiet money, verbs in an envelope, at the sink. I washed the vase. I washed it slowly. The way you wash a cup as someone else will use to drink courage. The roses were gone. I put a sprig of basil in the vase, not because it was pretty, but because it would make the room smell like a kitchen and remind grief how to eat. I walked it to the window and set it in the light. The glass took the sun and didn't hoard it. This is the part in stories where we declare the lesson and the future arrives polished. But kitchens are not stages. They are rooms where you slice your thumb and you laugh later because dinner still fed people. We would slice. We would laugh. We would feed. Silence isn't empty, my wife once wrote. It's where love shows its hands. I let the silence show its hands. They were calloused and clean. Quotable lines, she'd say. The smile that could hold an entire year. Attention is a seasoning, I whispered to the room. It isn't dinner. And then because truth likes a pair to walk with, I added. A legacy isn't what people say when you're gone. It's what moves when you are. The house answered in its language. A click, a sigh, a low warm run of air. The door waited like a good sentence. Open enough to walk through. Sturdy enough not to swing in the wind. By noon, a message from Mrs. Donovan. She came. She sat. She stayed. 3 verbs. No photograph. The perfect report. I carried the rent envelope to the hospice as snow began to invent itself around the edges of the day. I put the envelope down on a desk that had seen too many hands and not enough rest. I said my wife's name without wincing. The clerk stamped a small rectangle that meant nothing to hearts and everything to rooms. On the walk home, I did not rehearse a speech or plan a post or imagine a camera. I counted breaths. I matched them to my steps. When the house opened its mouth and let me in, the kettle recognized me. The basil made good on its promise. The journal waited for my next Thursday. At the table, I took the grocery list and wrote one more thing beneath basil, milk, bread, doors, I wrote, and then after the dash, keep open. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments. Word count, 1162 characters to be continued. Say continue to proceed. You said, continue. ChatGPT said,
Thought for 3.
Monday turned into a week that behaved like a month. Grief stretches time. Work gives it back. Chloe went to the hospice with the ugly hat and came home with a voice the house recognized. Not loud, not selling, not empty. Tired in the bones, steady in the eyes. Mrs. Donovan makes tea like a ceremony. She said the first night, twisting the hat in her hands. The way you wring out a cloth. She puts the cups in a line and says their names. Porcelain, stoneware, paper. She says each one holds heat differently, and we have to notice who needs which. She looked at me. People are cups. Some crack and still hold, I said. Some shine and always feel cold, she added, and then flushed, because she knew which cup she had been. I didn't say it. I buttered bread with a patience that was not for butter. The brand accounts tried small tricks. They cut old clips to look new. They turned quotes into new fonts and hoped the law wouldn't notice. It did. Our lawyer sent letters that walked on firm legs. Remove, they read, and the platforms obeyed with the reflex of a door taught by a better carpenter. The letter came from the county cool paper, straight lines. It acknowledged the deed in a grammar that didn't try to be liked. The rental check arrived on time, already pointed at the hospice by an agreement my wife had sealed months before. Quiet money kept its promise. I walked it over. The envelope warmed by the same pocket that warmed my hand in winter. The clerk stamped and I watched a small rectangle go from blank to done. The sound was barely a sound. I felt it in my ribs. Chloe clocked hours without telling anyone about them. The first day she sat and learned to keep a silence that didn't ask to be seen. The second day, she wiped counters as if removing fingerprints from a crime she hadn't meant to commit. The third, she held an old man's hand while his granddaughter read him the weather in a voice that trembled at the edges. She said, I can stay, and learned that staying is what verbs do when they grow up. Noah went with her sometimes. He stood and fetched and learned the name of the machine that makes air easier to breathe. He learned to coil tubing in a way that didn't kink. He asked the nurse how to fold a blanket so the edge wouldn't scratch. He came home with a new slowness in his pockets. The kind that isn't laziness, the kind that keeps cups from cracking. On Thursday, I wrote in the journal. The room moved, I wrote. Because the verb arrived, I pressed the basil leaf I'd clipped that morning and left a green smudge that looked like a map of some kinder country I hoped we might live in for a while. Miriam came by with a tin of cookies that tasted like the good parts of old school holidays. I'm not here to talk about her, she said, pointing at the picture in the hall. I'm here to talk about you. She placed a hand on my shoulder with a weight that steadied the chair. You're allowed to be the one being helped. She watched me the way a nurse watches a drip. Letting is heavy work, I said. She smiled. You've been lifting heavier. We fixed the back door hinge. We wrote thank you cards that did not pretend to be novels. We delivered one to a neighbor who snowblowed our sidewalk without asking. He refused cocoa and opened his palms to the air like a person trying to warm them on a prayer nobody had to hear. Your wife always told me where the drifts would form before they did, he said, and then made the drift move with the same sentence. The quiet punishment my wife built into the paper did its work without spectacle. There was no dramatic exile, no family meeting with pointing fingers. There was the amendment. There was the clause that named the boundary. There was a season where a young woman walked herself to a room with no camera and asked what she could hold. We did have one more reading, less public, more binding. The lawyer sat at our kitchen table because kitchens make even law speak its best voice. He read the trust aloud with a cadence that made it sound less like a weapon and more like a recipe written by someone who wanted you to succeed. Clause 3, he said, not unkind. Clause 4. He looked at Chloe over the top of his glasses and not over the top of his authority. You know what this requires? I do, she said. She didn't add a flourish. She didn't ask for a deal. She crossed the days on a calendar with an ugly pen that put ink where she told it to and nowhere else. 200 hours, the paper said. No posts, only presents. She counted presents in cups of tea, in pillows fluffed, in names remembered, in the way her hand learned to find another hand without making a story out of it. She sold nothing. That was the cutoff that mattered. Her social metrics dropped like glassware. Someone finally put on the right shelf. The loss was the correct size. It hurt in the way a bad tooth aches when it realizes it is no longer allowed to command the mouth. She emailed managers and said no. Some replied with concern, packaged as opportunity. Some with opportunity packaged as concern. She answered with the same sentence each time. I'm busy, she wrote. I'm at the hospice. Silence took up residence where applause had been rooming. It ate less. It cleaned up after itself. It paid rent on time. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from a name I didn't expect. The pastor's own son, 3 states away. Saw the stream, he wrote. Heard the line. We closed the church comment feature for a month and told people to come in person if they want to speak. Attendance doubled. The quiet got full. He added a photo of a whiteboard that said simply verbs only. It made me laugh in the kitchen. A larger page tried to bait Chloe with a framed video. A split screen of her older clips and a headline that wanted to fight. Redemption arc, it teased. Or just rebrand. She texted me the link with no commentary. I wrote back, delete, serve, repeat, she replied. On my way to 5 to 9, Mrs. D says the evening needs a steady kettle. Public confession reversal happened not by her making a grander tape than the first one, but by refusing tape at all. The room that had watched her perform watched her work. A much smaller audience. The only one that matters when you need a verb. On Saturday, the hospice had its tea at 8 and pretended the party harder because a snow squall pressed its face against the window like a child excluded from a game. A man named Raj fell asleep for the last time between the second cup and the knock from the wind. Chloe told me later she thought she would break. She didn't. She held his daughter's elbow as the woman learned how to leave a room without having to remember how to breathe. She went home and slept 12 hours like a firefighter who was starting to understand her fires. Noah and I replaced the batteries in the smoke alarms, which felt like an honest ritual for a house learning new sounds. He stood on a chair that remembered his toddler feet and reached with hands that had been taught to carry without filming. He grinned when the test tone bragged and then quieted. Nana would hate that beep, he said.
She liked bells. I said, not shrieks.
Chloe's old followers sent emails. A few hateful, more confused. Some kind. Kai didn't know how to stop watching. One girl wrote, "Thank you for stopping." Chloe answered the ones she could with one sentence. Try visiting someone who's sick. She refused to become a brand about not being a brand. She refused to sell silence. That refusal tore more gently than any speech could have. Then the courthouse day arrived. The filing that would move a comma into a period. The trust would stand even if nobody looked. A paper doesn't need applause. But people need closure with stamps. We put on coats that made us honest in winter and walked through a building designed to make everyone feel smaller in a way that encourages attention, not fear. The clerk read the docket number in a voice that sounded as if he would read this number even if the building were empty. Case number wasn't a case so much as a record. The judge initialed the notice that the amendment had been lodged. The deed accepted, the rent pledged. Any objection? He asked, out of habit and fairness. Chloe stood. She looked at the seal. She looked at the sentence on the amendment that had cut out her old inheritance and shaped a way back into something better. No, she said. Then yes. 1. The judge tilted his head. Yes, he asked. Yes, I object, she said, to who I was when I thought I was owed more than what I was willing to carry. I don't object to the paper, she exhaled. I object to my posture. She sat. The clerk smiled into his chest where smiles are allowed to be private. When we left, the wind was mean in a way that made the basil at home drop a leaf out of empathy. We got to the car with a stack of copies we didn't show anyone, because showing would have been the wrong verb. In the lot, a woman who had been behind us at the counter caught my sleeve. Your granddaughter, she said, meaning the case without saying case. She said the sentence, love is a verb. She looked at the sky as if love were up there instead of working its usual job in kitchens. We need more people saying that without cameras. More doing, I said. Right, she said. That the small punishment continued. The social currency she had minted in herself no longer purchased tables near the front. Invitations arrived that said collaboration and meant please bleed for us in public. She declined. Some people wrote her off like a business expense. Others wrote to ask how not to be written off. She told them to visit old people. The slow contagion of verbs began to spread the way basil spreads. If you let it get a little wild and don't cut it into shapes. At home, I took the journal down and opened to a page that had the faint shadow of an old grocery list pressed through. What is left when the stage is dark? My wife had written. The kitchen. And the hands you still trust in the dark. I touched the line the way you test wood for rotch and find it weight-bearing. I wrote beneath it, the hands are here. We had a final gathering for family. Not a wake, a room with chairs and soup, and the sense that we needed to say out loud what paper had made real. I placed the journal on the table where the sun does its brief tour at noon and set the ring's velvet square beside it like a small mountain that refuses to erode because it knows its job. Chloe stood, not at the head, near the Windows draft where memory keeps people awake. "I'm not speaking for content," she said. "I'm speaking to finish a sentence." She looked at me, I nodded. "I used to think a legacy was something shiny, other people handed you," she said. "It's a weight you pick up." I dropped it. "I'm picking it up. If the paper says I get nothing, I accept the paper. If the paper says there's a door, I'll go through it. If the kitchen says there's a pot to wash, I'll wash it. If the hospice says there's tea to pour, I'll pour it. When I finish the hours Mrs. Donovan signs, I'll keep showing up, because hours aren't the point. People are." Her silence after the sentence was the loudest sound of the night. I felt the room adjust. People set down spoons, and the drafts turned into warmth. My son put his hand over his face and learned how not to speak for a while. When he moved his hand, his eyes were honest in a way the stage doesn't permit. "I taught you to love applause," he said to his daughter. "I'm sorry. I will unteach. Stay patient. We'll unlearn together," she said. "I'm not in a hurry." She looked almost shy. The quiet sat beside her and didn't reach for its phone. In the corner, Mrs. Donovan said, "Because practical people never leave you with nothing to do. We're low on clean mugs." Chloe went gladly. Near the end of the evening, the stranger from the fellowship hall, the one who had shown the re-upload, approached. She'd been watching all week from the timid edge of town where some people keep their hearts because the center has been dangerous. She put her phone on the table face up, unlocked, and did nothing with it. "I work in social media for a hospital," she said. "I came to apologize for the world we built. I can't dismantle it alone. But I can stop adding bricks." She smiled. "Small. I brought mugs. We washed them in a line. Chloe dried. Noah stacked. Miriam inspected like a humorless saint. We failed at silence once or twice and laughed at where the water went. We watched the sink behave like a river you can use. We did not take photographs. The light made squares on the floor that remembered us anyway. When the last chair stood against the wall the way chairs do when they are done helping, I walked Chloe to the door. The night had a clean bite. The basil on the sill bowed a little as if acknowledging the moon. "How many hours?" I asked. 157, she said. Mrs. Donovan keeps a ledger in her head. She's better than paper. "You'll finish," I said. "I'll keep going," she said. "Finish is the wrong verb." She hugged me. Not like a broadcast, not like a stamp, but like a person who had learned where the ribs are and how to avoid bruising them. "Grandpa," she said, "thank you for choosing paper and kitchens over microphones." "I chose your grandmother," I said. "Paper and kitchens were the shape that choice took." She laughed softly. "Quotable," she said. Affectionate and teasing at once. "Thoughts wearing good shoes," I said, and we both heard my wife in it. Amused. Snow started to pretend to be real again. We let it. I closed the door on a night that had decided to be kind to us. Later, I wrote in the journal for the last time that week. "We moved the room," I wrote. "We did not move the world. Rooms are how worlds change their minds." I added a line because the day asked for one. "Attention is a seasoning, service is the meal." I then added another because even a kitchen earns a couplet. "Silence is not a lack. It is a tool. It lets the verb be heard." In the morning, an envelope came from the hospice. It held a note written in a hand that had learned to write around grief. She sits, she stays, she listens, she pours, she asks, she remembers, she returns, she keeps returning. 7 verbs, no adjective. The best grade a life can earn. On the first day she crossed 200. Chloe didn't tell anyone. Mrs. Donovan handed her a small index card with a date and her initials and a basil leaf pressed flat between tape. "You can show this if a lawyer ever needs proof," she said. "But the kitchen already knows." Chloe came home and put the card in the drawer with the spare keys and the ring. She didn't film the moment. She took the ugly hat off and put it on the chair where hats go when they know they'll be needed tomorrow. She sat at the table and broke bread without asking the bread to be anything but bread. She said the blessing in a voice the house claimed like a song you remember before the first note. That night, she opened her old account to delete it forever. She hovered, she breathed, she saw the archive of days that thought they were big. She pictured the hospice's mugs, and Mrs. Donovan's ledger, and the way the basil smelled when it realized it had work to do again. She closed the laptop. "Another day," she said. "Not because I want to keep it, because I want to delete it on a day when I'm sure Not on a day when I'm tired.
Good verbs, I said.
In bed, the house held me. The pillow had learned to accept a new weight. My wife's side kept a shape no dust could fill. I spoke to her the way you speak to a room you finally clean. We did what you asked, I said. We kept the small rooms small. We kept the door open. We let silence do its job. I waited. The furnace answered in its accent. It was enough. In the morning, I wrote one more line on the grocery list. After doors. Keys, I wrote. Then on the way to the market, I passed the park where the rental faces east. The windows held the pale gold of a day trying to make a promise without overcommitting. A young couple carried a plant up the steps, basil by the shine of it. They balanced the pot between them and laughed at something heavy that had just become manageable. I didn't tell them the rent had already been sent to a room they might need someday. The best doors stay secret until you push. At home, I set a new plant on our sill, next to the vase. The old basil had done its work. It had pointed. It had perfumed. It had kept the room honest. The new plant took the light and asked for water in a voice that would get louder if I ignored it. That seemed right. My phone buzzed. Chloe going to the hospice. They need someone to sit with a teenager whose brother is in surgery. I don't know what to say.
May.
Say their names. Ask what they eat when they're sad. Offer to hold the cup. Chloe. Copy. Mo verb. Chloe. Verb. Noah. I'm bringing hot chocolate. The kind that isn't content. Me. The only kind worth making. I put the phone down and watched the window translate winter into something we could live with. The door was open a finger's width, the way we keep it now. The house breathed. The kettle began to consider boiling. A sentence started forming in the back of my throat and decided it could wait. When I finally walked to the drawer and opened it, ring card, keys, I felt no sting, only a weight that sits right when you learn where to hold it. I pressed a kiss to the velvet, not because velvet remembers, but because I do. I put the card back. I put the keys in my pocket. I put my hand on the table and felt wood that had said yes to 1,000 meals. This is where legacies live. Not in edits, in elbows on wood, in verbs that leave their fingerprints where varnish can't hide them. If you are still listening, take this home. Don't sell your sorrow. Spend it. Turn it into meals. Make your rooms kind. Keep your doors open. And when someone offers you flowers with a smirk, answer with a kitchen that doesn't believe in stages. Want more stories like this? Like, subscribe, and let's talk in the comments.